and that was number 8 excerpt marked Andante con moto. And this year's music really seems to be quite a bit about articulation, different styles and combinations of articulation. So that's what we're going to focus on here. And of course, with any kind of articulation, I know it's about your tongue, but really the most important thing is your air. It's always your air. If something doesn't work, check your air. So as far as while we're playing anything, and articulation in particular, we just need to make sure the air continues to move forward. It's basically the fuel that keeps this reed vibrating, and if the reed isn't vibrating well, your tongue doesn't have anything to work with. So let's just make sure that air is working really well, and we'll do a few things about that to check on your air. In the excerpt that I just played, we need to figure out how to play a good staccato. And what does staccato really mean? Well, basically, it means that there is going to be separation between notes. So the steps we want to take to get to that, let's make sure that our air is working really well, and of course that our embouchure stays really steady, and that our tongue is staying consistent up and forward, very high in our mouth. So maybe you want to play the first line of this all slurred to check. Let's try that. So when I play it slurred, I'm making sure that I'm playing good register changes. I'm making sure that my fingers are moving precisely and cleanly from note to note. And of course, I'm really making sure that my air never stops. It's getting between the notes. The second step you might take would be, okay, let's go back and play the same thing, but this time, now that I've checked on my air, let's check on my tongue stability. And if I'm going to play a very legato and light articulation, that hopefully will translate nicely from the good slurred passage I played. So I'm going to play the same thing, but I'm going to play with a very light legato touch. And with that, I'm seeing how close the tip of my tongue can stay to the reed, so that I'm moving to the reed and releasing the reed. I'm always thinking about releasing the reed to vibrate. I don't want to think about going to the reed. That kind of takes care of itself. If I can release for every note very cleanly and gently, then that's going to help me get the best legato articulation. I'm also going to listen for as little space between the notes as possible. I might want to check and even play 2 of every pitch, just to feel how close I can stay to the reed. If you want to check on that legato style motion, just say ni 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 ni, say ni really fast. Ni 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 ni, and you'll find that your tongue does almost exactly the kind of motion you need for legato articulation. You just don't go as fast. Notice it is a release of the roof of your mouth. Ni 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 ni. You can feel that. Your tongue is releasing the roof of your mouth. So we've said that staccato basically means short and separated. Separation is the key here. We want space between the notes. So what does that mean from a technical perspective of what you're actually doing in your mouth? You're going to keep your air moving the whole time, but you will stop the reed's vibration with your tongue. So you release the reed for the note, and then you return to the reed very quickly. You get back to that reed as soon as possible, and then you spend time on the reed. That is what makes the space that you want to have for space between notes. Let's try it on one note. How about thumb in 1E is a nice note. It's not too resistant. And I want you to try to play 3 or 4 or more notes, experimenting with keeping your air moving the whole time and returning to the reed and staying there. Let's pretend that we're going to play 8th note, 8th rest, 8th note, 8th rest. You're going to try to have an exact amount of silence because your tongue is on the reed. You might try to hear the air continue to blow. If you are collapsing the reed, if you're pressing that reed too hard into the mouthpiece, the air won't feel like it has anywhere to go, and that might not work as well. If you can lighten your touch a little bit so you can still hear air hissing around there, that's what you want to do. Okay. You might even squeak. One thing that could make the squeaks happen is if your embouchure changes while you are spending time on the reed and then you release. When you release the reed to vibrate, if your embouchure has gotten loose, things can be unstable and squeaks can happen from instability. So let's try the first line now. We've done slurred, we've done legato touch. Now let's try a staccato version. So for that version, I'm returning to the reed. I'm spending some time there to try to make that space happen. Okay, another challenge with the staccato is related to combinations of slurring and tonguing. For example, if you look at the last 2 measures of this excerpt that we've been playing, you're going to see the combination of slur 2 and tongue 2 staccato notes. On this one, you're going to work, instead of tonguing everything, you just have to make sure that your tongue returns to the reed after the 2nd note, or after the note that you slur into. Of course, as I mentioned before, you do this without stopping your air. You keep that air blowing. Your tongue returning to the reed is what will make the space happen. So one way that you can try to figure out how this feels is trying to speak the rhythm. For example, repeat after me. Da what dut dut. Go ahead and try it. Da what dut dut. Now, your mouth is not going to do all that while you're actually playing because embouchure and tongue position, but it kind of helps you see a little bit of when we speak this nonsense syllabic stuff, da what dut dut, the T at the end of what and dut. That T is representative of your tongue going back and returning to the reed. When you say it, what, dut, your tongue snaps back to the roof of your mouth. That's exactly what's going to happen while you're playing, except the reed gets in the way. Your tongue gets up there, pop, with that T ending, and that stops the reed's vibration. So after you say it, da, what, dut, dut, now experiment and do it with kind of an air quality. You kind of make your mouth, start making an embouchure. You can't quite do it all the way. It gets a little weird, but if you kind of pucker like you're trying to whistle, and make that sound with your air, and have your tongue pretend that you are saying da, what, dut, dut, you get that quality of your tongue snapping back. Okay? Now let's try to play that, the last 2 measures of the music. Hopefully that feels like that is working for you. That's what you need to do. So remember that your air will never stop. And in order to make the staccato, you return your tongue to the reed, and that's what creates the space between the notes. Now you should notice that you have a variation of the slur 2 tongue 2 combination in your excerpt that's marked number 1 in this year's music. And in this case, it's slur 3 tongue 1. So kind of like we did with the last one with da what dut dut, a way that you could get your tongue sort of figuring out what needs to happen would be da ah what dut, da what dut. You're going to return your tongue to the reed after the 3rd pitch when you have slur 3 tongue 1. So how would that feel with that air thing? Da what dut. Of course, when you're playing it, you don't want your air to have to pulse kind of like you do when you're speaking this in order to get the ah part. You're not going to do it quite like that with your air. Your air will be much more consistent and steady, but again, it's the idea of where your tongue returns to the reed. Let's go ahead and play the first 4 measures of this piece to see how that slur 3 tongue 1 is going to sound. I hope that these tips will help you as you're preparing your all-region music this year. For more essential information about clarinet fundamentals, check out my video about changing registers. Thanks for watching.